what kind of partners we're choosing.
Yeah.
Because, again, marriage or not marriage, regardless of your ring choice or whatever, right? It depends on the quality of your relationship.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to make the biggest difference in your life, your joint life going forward, especially if there are kids involved.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Maddie, we're going to start hot and heavy here with the loaded question, which is, where's that ring on your finger?
Yeah, everybody wants to know that, including myself.
Okay, Omari, come on. What is it?
Yeah,
What's coming up?
Where's the wedding ring? Where's the engagement ring?
Yeah. You
Yeah,
guys talked about it?
yeah, it's coming.
Okay.
It's coming. It's just, I think, where we're at right now, like, we live together, we have a baby, and we have a shared bank account. Like, realistically, nothing really changes about our life if we get married, other than the fact that I would have a ring on my finger and I'd get to say, this is my husband, instead of this is my baby daddy, or this is actually, oh my gosh, we talk about this a lot. Like, what do you call the father of your child that you're with? And like, he is my husband, but we're just not legally married, so I don't call him my husband because that's not who he is legally.
Right.
But boyfriend just sounds like stupid.
It sounds like a downgrade is what it sounds like.
Yeah, it's
right?
like, this is my boyfriend. I just brought him to family dinner to meet my parents. Like, that's kind of, it feels very like high school.
Yeah. Do you feel like you get a lot of flack because of that? Like, are there some societal expectations around, because you guys have a child together especially, that now, like, the titles should be different?
Yes, 100%. Everybody asks Omari, when are you getting married? When are you going to get engaged? Like, when are you sending wedding invitations,
Right.
Yeah, like, Omari's aunties were all just in town over the holidays, and Omari, when are you getting married? We need to plan to come to the wedding, because they're out of town, whatever. Yeah, so I do think, and like, before my grandpa passed away, he had said something to my sister about how we should be married now that we have a baby, and why aren't we married? Because we have a baby together,
Interesting.
And I mean, I kind of feel that too. As a woman, I think it's a status thing.
Interesting. We did kind of like poke the bear a little bit with this one, because we went to the farmer's market the other day to play place with our kids. And I asked you there because I noticed it in myself that I was ring checking people.
Yeah.
And I asked you if that was something that you'd experienced and if that makes you like uncomfortable or anything. So does it change the way that you feel when you know that people are kind of expecting that from you?
Yeah, it does. It makes me feel a little bit like just lesser than. In like a subtle way though. Like, I don't go around being like, like, I don't lose sleep over it. I don't cry about it. Like, I know it's coming down the road. It's just that rings are a lot of money.
Weddings are a lot of money.
And yeah, we could elope, and we've kind of talked about possibly doing that as well, but I still want to wear the dress and take the photos and have the party.
Yeah.
And Omari's got a big circle of friends and family.
People want to celebrate you.
Yeah, and I think we want to celebrate our love in a bigger way than just going to the courthouse, you know?
Right. Yeah, fair.
So yeah, that costs money, and we're talking about having another baby within the next few years. And we'd want a bigger house when we do that. And so I would rather like spend $60,000 on a house that I'm going to live in for a few years at least, and is an investment in our future, versus like spending $60,000 on a one-day party, So I think for us, like Omari said, like, whether we're married or not, like, it doesn't change the way I'm going to love you.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a really interesting topic because I think there's starting to be this great divide generationally, where a lot more younger families, younger couples especially, who kind of are in this economic, like, really intense situation, right? Where we're just trying to make ends meet, and we're trying to just carry on with our lives, especially when we're talking about the housing crisis right now in Calgary. It's insane. as the opportunity to buy a house, it feels like a very fleeting experience right now.
Yeah.
Right. And then in contrast, we have the older generations that are like, okay, get married, get married, get married. And I think traditionally marriage, like weddings specifically, come with a big cost. Like they're big ticket items usually.
Yeah.
And it's kind of put people in a lot of uncomfortable situations, because then you've got your family members that have this expectation of you that there is this the streamlined process of, you get together, you get engaged, you get married, then you have kids and you have a house, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
But especially in the times that we're living in now, it seems like we're kind of hopping around the timelines based on how we're able to kind of make our lives work.
Well, the other thing, women have a biological clock.
Yes.
Like, I get that
we'll talk about that a lot.
The 30s are your new 20s. That's great. Like, I can come to terms with the fact that I am going to be buying my first house in my 30s. That's fine with me. But if I was waiting to get married and then get engaged, wait a year, get married, have a honeymoon, buy a house, you know what? I don't want to be having for me personally, I don't want to be having babies into my late 30s, early 40s, because it just biologically and scientifically, it becomes a little bit more complicated. Not that it's impossible, but the odds change.
Right. Statistically
speaking, the odds are a little bit lower to get pregnant successfully with a healthy child in your 40s.
Right.
It's doable, but the chance of you needing fertility intervention goes up.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and so for me, I chose that I'm going to go with the age that is biologically more advantageous for me to have children.
That's a really interesting point, is priorities in people's lives. Because again, this comes back to the generational priorities, is that a ring on the finger means that you're committed. And if you have it legally documented, then that's going to provide you the stability that you need to have that family, to have the house. Yeah. Right. And I think a lot of times these days is more, and maybe pitch in with your thoughts on this, that the idea is that a ring doesn't change commitment. So what are your thoughts on that?
I agree.
That a ring doesn't change commitment?
I don't think it does. I mean, legally, I think it changes commitment in the sense that it makes it more difficult to separate.
Do you think that's a barrier itself, though? A positive barrier where people are more likely to try to work it out and stay longer?
I think it depends on the person and what kind of financial dollars are at stake.
True.
But I think for us, and my mom had said this to me too, that when she got pregnant with me, she felt an overwhelming sense of commitment to my dad, even though they had been married for 2 years or something already. Because she was having a baby is a bigger commitment than marriage, because you can dissolve a marriage, but if you have a kid together, you're tied to that person for at least 18 years.
Interesting. Do you mind me asking what her parents' role was? Oh, God. Is there divorce in your guys' family?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, my grandparents on my mom's side had a not a nice. It was a pretty messy divorce.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's something I would also like to delve into more, is people's examples in their lives and how that impacts their perspective on commitment and what marriage looks like. Because in my family, I come from a very traditional family where, I don't, there have been divorces within my extended family.
Yeah.
But generally the expectation is that you fight through it as long as possible. And even if you're maybe unhappy, you stay together, because there's kids, or because you tried to build this life together.
Yeah.
And it is definitely a challenging on my biases, especially because I've always I'm going to counter your opinions here. I've come at it from a lot more of a traditional standpoint, where I think marriage is a really special commitment. And I think it does solidify things a little bit. Maybe it's just legally, maybe you just in the back of your head realize that there's more hoops to jump through if you want to separate.
Yeah.
But I think just like all the extra, maybe like envisioning is kind of what it comes down to, is like once you decide to get engaged, once you decide to get married, you're now officially deciding that your future life together is combined.
Yeah.
And so it's been interesting to watch, to maybe assess how those kind of thought processes for me are tied to the family members that I have that have decided to stay in committed relationships and have decided that marriage comes before kids. But again, it all becomes like this really interesting cycle because it is because our family members have lived in different economical times too, and religious times, right? Like religion plays a huge role in it. I found, at least in my family.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting.
That's also too, I think, where Omari and I have felt like a lot less pressure to do so, because neither one of our families is super religious.
Right.
Like neither one of us went to church regularly ever growing up. And Omari's parents eloped, like they didn't have a big fancy wedding. My parents have always said, like, save the money on the wedding and like have a nicer honeymoon, or like use it to buy a house, like and still, like, my parents don't ever, they'll joke sometimes about like, oh, when are you getting married? But it's never like a, when are you getting married? Like, you've had a baby. Like, it's not a serious, like, they're not upset that we're not married,
Yeah.
And I agree. Like, I do still want to get married because I do think that, like, it's like, I like the ceremonial idea of, like, bringing together the, like, union and, like, being part of the same family.
Yeah.
And I've said, like, I want to get married because I want the same last name as my child. Because right now we have different last names, and I just feel weird about it. And I know, like, a lot of families are married and the wife doesn't ever change her last name and whatever. Like, I don't really think that is a big deal for everybody. But for me, I'm like, I would like the same last name as my child. And I'm not just going to change my last name without marrying you.
Yeah. That's a really interesting point that you bring up, like this unity kind of feeling and like the symbolic aspect of marriage. Because, that might be some element of like the never getting married kind of aspect that people don't like think about as often, as just like what it represents. Yeah. Right? It's not necessarily like what exactly it is, but what it represents is the unifying aspect of marriage. Yeah. That's a really interesting point.
Yeah. We had gone to, never mind. I'm going to skip over my thought on that.
So what are your thoughts here on being together for like a very long time and not ever getting married?
I think if that works for you, it works for you. I don't, like, if we're still another 10 years down the road from where we are right now and we're still not married, I'm going to be like, dude.
What the heck?
What the heck?
For you personally.
For me personally. But, like, like, we have a family member who has been with her partner for, like, 21 years.
Yeah.
Their daughter's, like, 19 now. And that works for them. And she's like, I'm never going to get married. And that's fine. He's my person and we're going to do life together. And we've agreed on that. And it's none of anybody else's business.
Yeah. It's interesting. I would like to understand more about like the laws, like the legal aspect of that. Because I think, isn't it past a certain point that you are
common law?
Common law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Mari and I think as soon as you have a child with somebody and if you're living together, I think you are common law automatically. I think that timeline kind of goes away after there's children involved.
Interesting.
But I think it's 3 years now.
Oh, okay.
I think it used to be 3 months. If you live together, then you're common law. I think they've increased that to 3 years. I think. Cross check.
Yeah.
These are Canadian laws also. I don't know where
we're
else
just
in the world.
speculating.
Yeah.
We don't really know about what we're talking about.
Yeah. But yeah, so like Omari and I are common law. We have to file our taxes together. Like,
gotcha.
The government treats us as though we're like a unified thing anyways.
Right.
So
yeah, it's just very personal at that point. Because
Yeah, and I think for me, watching rom-coms growing up, you get this fairy tale idea that like if somebody wants to marry you, they're like, it's this glamorous romantic thing, And I think you
kind of just want that.
Yeah, you romanticize the wedding. And I think in past relationships, like especially in my early 20s, it's like, I want to marry this person.
Right. It's very romantic.
Yeah, it's so
very
romantic, but
Yeah.
like, is the like, just because y'all are together doesn't mean that even if you get married, you know, like some people I think
Yeah.
get married because there's issues in the relationship and they think a wedding is going to fix the problem.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so I think, yeah, conversations Omari and I have had, he's like, we have a healthy relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm committed to you. I'm like committed to supporting you and Arden through everything. And like, if we get married, it's not going to change what I'm already doing.
That's lovely.
You know?
Yeah. I think that's a really good point in and of itself, is that marriage itself doesn't fix things.
No.
That in a relationship, it has to be a constant evolution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so even if you decide, again, counter to your experience, if you decide that marriage comes first, that can't be the end of the road for the growth within the relationship.
Yeah.
It has to be a constant, okay, let's check in with each other now as legal husband and wife, but you're still two different, very, very different people, very different backgrounds, very different communication styles. That has to grow as a unit.
Yeah, you have to go together.
That doesn't change whether you're married or not.
No.
Yeah.
So I think like being committed to like consistently growing together and communicating and supporting one another goes a lot further than just like you don't want to like devalue marriage, but like at the end of the day, it's kind of it's a legal contract, right?
Right.
That like you can dissolve if you want to. It's a pain in the butt to do so, from what I've heard, like going through lawyers and courts and custody and whatever. But I think like, I think there's a lot to be said about like growing together every day and like not just because you're married, you know. Divorce is what, 50%?
I don't know. It's
and
definitely rising.
Even then though, like my grandparents were together from the time they were like 18 until the day they passed, you know? And like looking back, I wouldn't say they had, like, I don't think my grandmother was very happy in that marriage.
Oh, that's so sad.
You know? Like they had, like, everybody has their moments of being like, but I think there's a conversation I've kind of heard just like in the collective in general, like, I think it's Glennon Doyle, who I was listening to her podcast or her book called Untamed.
Mm-hmm.
And she talks about how she was staying in her marriage because she had kids with this man and wanted to like keep the marriage together so that she wouldn't break her daughter's heart. And then she said, but then I started to ask myself, like, would I want this marriage for my daughter? Because she like looks to me as her standard in life. And like, I teach her what is acceptable. And so for her to see me stay in this marriage where I'm not happy and I'm not satisfied and I'm not like fulfilled, like, would I want this marriage for my daughter? And the answer was no.
Oh,
and
that's tough.
Right? So she's like, either way, I risk breaking my daughter's heart. But if I leave and I like follow what's on my soul, then hopefully the hope would be that your children see that like you can put yourself first and your happiness is important.
Yeah.
You know, regardless of other people.
And the partner that you're with makes a huge difference. So I think this is a really fun way to like turn the content of this podcast episode.
Yeah.
Is less away from like marriage or not marriage.
Yeah.
And more away from, or more towards what kind of partners we're choosing. Because again, marriage or not marriage, regardless of your ring choice or whatever, right? It depends on the quality of your relationship.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to make the biggest difference in your life, your joint life going forward, especially if there are kids involved.
Yeah.
So what were some qualities that you were looking for in a partner or have found in your partner that have made you comfortable to say, I would like to get married one day and I'm willing to wait?
Okay, this is going to get into a little bit of mine and Omari's love story. But I was working with a coach friend of mine when I was like 20, in my early 20s, regardless. Doesn't matter what age. She's like, you have to, this is when I went through a phase in my 20s where I was like very much like, I want a loving, committed partner. Like, I want to find like my person. You know?
Yeah.
And I was like, how do I do that? Like, how do I stop these guys on dating apps from just like ghosting, or we like see each other for like 8 weeks and then you're like, peace out, bye. And then, you know, I was like, I want to find my person who I can grow with and like build a life together with. And she's like, well, you have to raise your standards. And she made me, she's like, you have to write out your standards for like every detail of your life. And so I worked with her and I came up with a list of like 75 standards. And then she was like, yeah, so the next guy you go on a date with, just like hand him the list.
Check off these points, please.
And so Omari and I were like, we're friends at the time. We were always just like friends. He was deep in the friend zone. And if you talk to him, he'll tell you he clawed his way out of that friend zone. But at the time I was like, yeah, I came up with this list of standards for like my perfect person. Here you go, read it. Like as a friend,
That's
I was
so
like,
great.
it's like you should, man took notes.
He probably took screenshots. He was like, I'm gonna post these on my wall. That's so awesome.
Yeah. And so I think for me it was like getting clear on that. And then
so what were some of the points? Can you give us top 3?
Yeah, top 3 were like is like willing to communicate with me when things go awry. Wants to go out and like socialize with my friends and like gets along with the other people in my life.
Good one.
It's like always like calm when we have like conversations and doesn't like gaslight me.
Yeah.
I guess like respect, like listens, like is a good listener and like is willing to like listen to what I have to say and like communicate that way. A lot of it was around
good ones.
Communication and like yeah, so
huge.
Yeah.
That's so fun. I would agree with that. Those are some of the things that I valued as well going into it.
Yeah.
What's funny with Josh and my relationship is that I basically told him right out of the gate that it was like not going anywhere.
You told him it wasn't going anywhere?
Yeah. So I was planning to like leave town basically. And so I was like, I have other plans for my life currently. It doesn't involve a man. He was like, that's great. You're going to like succeed. You're going to do so great. I'm so proud of you. And I was like, oh, a supportive, kind man? Mm-hmm. And so things just started to take off from there. But it was definitely like there were a handful of key characteristics that he had that I was like, you know what, maybe this is worth it.
What are the key characteristics?
Well, very similar to you, I think. Like he was a really good communicator. And I'm a little bit fiery. Like I'm a bit of a spitfire. And so what I noticed pretty early on was that I didn't really have to mask, and I didn't feel like I was a bad person for like who I was, even though I obviously have things to work on. He always just made me feel like I could work through it too.
Yeah.
And he loved and respected me during that process, you know, and it wasn't like you are too much or you are bad for the way that you are. And that was very healing for me. So yeah, very calm and collected as well.
Yeah.
People who like get to know Josh right away, it's really interesting. And I noticed this right away too, is he has like this very calm demeanor.
Yeah.
And like even in his voice, I don't know what it is. I wish I could remember what it was like when he first introduced himself to me. Because I just remember being like, whoa, there's something different about this dude. What's happening? But I remember really feeling super calm around him.
Yeah.
And I need that.
Yeah.
So very calm, great at communicating, similar to you. Made me feel like I was a positive work in progress and he would be there. And then an additional fourth one is that like I knew he was a hard worker and I knew he was full of integrity. And that is what I needed in a partner, especially because you just don't know what your life is going to turn into. But you know that you need somebody who will support and will work as a partner beside you. Because the last thing that I wanted was to have a partner where I felt like I was dragging them along or that I was going to grow and they weren't going to grow with me.
Yeah.
And so, those are really important. And they've continued to be important. And so I think similar, like both of our values are, you've got to find your values that lay the foundation of your relationship. And then you can kind of build off of them.
So were you able to with Josh, like recognize that right away and be like, oh, like I really like these qualities in him. Like this checks the boxes I want in my forever person? Or was like part of you like a little bit thrown off by that, like resistant to that?
I think a little bit resistant, but not much, because I was so enamored by like just who he was. It just felt very different. Like at the time I was in university and I was going on all these dates, and it always just felt very surface level, and all these dudes were just like, it kind of just like gives me the ick, you know? They just weren't like the dudes that I really wanted to stick around long term.
Yeah.
And then when Josh hung around, I remember like I had a roommate that really struggled academically in a couple of classes that he was really strong in.
Yeah.
And he offered to like help her with her homework and stuff like that, and like coach her through some of the things that she was struggling with. And I just remember that being really valiant, like that he, because I think she had some learning disabilities and things like that. So the fact that he was willing to take his time and be like, of course, like I will help you through this.
Yeah.
As a friend, like we weren't even, like we'd gone on one date and I basically friend zoned him, and I was like, we can hang out with all of our roommates collectively and we could just be friends. But, you know, little things like that, or like just the way that he would interact with other people. It was just note-taking here and there that there was just little check marks. And, yeah, I remember my sister for years, like asking me, how did you know that this was like a person for you? And it was just that, is that you start to, you kind of just like to, you have to take a back seat in your own head a little bit.
Yeah.
And not like speculate too much. You just have to take their actions and their words for face value.
So do you think it was helpful that you had friend zoned him right away? Because
oh girl, I used to love me a good like chase.
Here. Oh my god.
So yeah, that was probably the first time where I like actively been like, we're just friends. And it probably saved my bacon, because I love a good chase.
I do
the
too.
Excitement of a new relationship. It's so fun.
Does and he like me? Fun. Does he like me not?
Yeah, and it was fun as friends, because, and we were talking about this earlier on a totally different note, just about the messages that we used to send to our significant others when we were just friends. And it's like, oh girl. There was something there.
There was definitely something there.
It's so fun.
Funny.
It's great. It's really fun to watch your relationship blossom from like ground zero. And so I think that's, we're very lucky in that aspect that we were able to find somebody that we could start out as friends with. Because a lot of time people are like in the dating scene. And they're going forward to like find somebody to date. And then you're already in the throes of like, how do I feel romantically? Or like, am I attracted or whatever? And so it makes it complicated. So my heart goes out to anybody in the dating world right now, honestly.
God.
Peace and love with y'all.
Yeah. Oh man, that's so funny. I always joke the best advice my dad ever gave me that I never took was to have a lot of friends who were boys, but to never date anybody until you were mature enough to decide which one of your guy friends was the best guy for you.
That's actually really good advice.
It's such good advice. And when I was 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, I was like, Dad, okay, cool. Like, whatever, Dad. Whatever, Dad. You don't know what you're talking about.
You don't know.
No, I just should have taken my dad's advice, because that was the best advice he ever gave me, and I never took it. I mean, I guess I did eventually, but like...
Worked out.
It worked out. It's just funny, though, because I definitely felt like... Omari calls it the vibe started changing in our friendship. Yeah. And kind of same thing, like you were saying, like Josh started like doing things and you're like, oh, like that quality would be really good in a long-term partner. And like I started noticing those things in Omari too. I was like, oh, like I like that he is kind of like a leader and like organizes things. Yeah. And when I moved out of my parents' house, he like helped me move out and then showed up. I had joked and he was like, what do you need as a housewarming gift? And I was like, I have everything except the dumb groceries you have to buy once. It's like, I'm going to have to buy flour and like all of the like spices. And condiments. Yeah. I was like, I'm going to have to buy flour. And so like when he came to help me move, he's like standing on the road with a bag of flour. And I was like, you're dumb. Like, why did, like, of all the things you bought flour? He's like, no, I didn't just get flour. And he opens the trunk of his car and it's like stocked with like groceries.
That man loves you.
That's what my mom said. And I was like, Mom, no. Like at this point I'm like, you're totally right, Mom, but, like, I'm still, like, not sure if I want to, like, cross that line, you know?
That's so
Anyways, the groceries are the nail in the coffin, though. I was like, okay, I'd be an idiot not to take this guy up on this.
Next thing.
Well, it's funny, too, because so, like, yeah, we had, like, a conversation about whether or not we were, like, gonna, like, take things to the next level or not. And I was like, I'm just nervous because, like, we have such a good friendship and I don't want to screw up a good friendship, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, yeah, but, like, what if being together is actually, like, a really good thing? And I was like, I don't know.
Oh.
And then he's like, it's not like I'm asking you to marry me or anything. And I looked at him and I was like, yeah, but we both know if we date, that's where this ends.
Ooh.
And I mean, there's still
Full
no ring on my
circle.
finger.
Where's the ring? Where's the ring? You just gotta go back to that conversation, date it.
Yeah, date it, right? So funny. But yeah, so I was right. But it was just one of those things where I was like, there were no red flags.
That's awesome.
And I was like, I'd met all of his family. He'd met all my family. Like, I knew I got along with his siblings. He got along well with my siblings. Like, I liked his parents. He liked my parents. Like,
oh, that's such a good vibe.
You know?
Yeah.
And, like,
it fits.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. And I just don't think you get to commit to somebody having met their parents already if you're not friends first.
Yeah. There has to be some groundwork for sure.
Yeah.
Like, if there's one thing I've learned from all these trash TV dating shows, shout out to Love is Blind. Love you. It's that you have to have a really solid foundation of friendship.
Yeah.
Because if you go guns a-blazing with just the feelings of, like,
lust.
Lust. Yes. Lust and, like, I was going to say lust and love, but kind of, like, you can't just get so involved in, like, the feelings of love. Like, there has to be some backing to that, you know, where, you have to build off of more than just, like, those two feelings.
Yeah. I think also, too, lust comes and goes.
Totally.
You know? And so I think because the relationship for us was built on friendship, after you have a baby, your relationship goes through the ringer.
Sure does.
You know? And there's days where it's like, don't touch me, get away from me, like, do you know?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not feeling lustful towards you at all right now. Like, don't even, like...
Your body's defense mechanism.
I'm like, are you still talking? You know? But I think because the foundation of our relationship is friendship, is that, like...
Yeah.
When we're not in the, like, phase of having, like, rose-colored glasses on and going out for nice dinners at Earl's and, like... after you have a baby, like, we didn't go on a date for, like, 3 months. And, like, I know a lot of other couples go a lot longer than that without going on a date or, like, having romantic, intimate time. Like, I think the romance element, especially in those newborn days, is not there, really.
Yeah.
And I think because our relationship wasn't built on romance, it was built on friendship, like, I think friendship is more stable.
I agree.
Like, I can always be friends with you because I like you as a human. It's not just that I have rose-colored glasses on and I think you're good looking.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally. Something that really solidified that with my relationship with Josh is that we actually went long distance for a little while. And we just talked. And it was, like, so pure.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't realized until then how much time was just taken up with, like, going out and doing things.
Yeah.
And, like,
kissing.
Like, things that people do when they're in a relationship
love a good
together.
makeout.
Yeah. Love a good makeout. Sorry, Mom and Dad. Meanwhile, has a baby.
It's fine.
But yeah, just how much time is spent not, like, actually communicating like, really deep things or getting to know each other's souls for what they are.
Yeah.
And so people often, when we got married really young and really quick. I think we got married within a year of knowing each other.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So very quick. We got very lucky that it worked out, actually. But a big part of that, again, probably is down to the communication because we talked for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours.
Yeah.
And just really got to know each other.
Yeah.
And so that when we were actually together, it felt so familiar. We like knew each other in a totally different way than if we'd spent, 6 months going on dates to the movies.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, if there's one thing that I'm a huge advocate for is, like, quality conversation and making sure that it's not just fluff all the time.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
all this comes back to, you at the end of the day, ring or not, find your partner,
Yeah.
but make sure there's some good qualities in your
Yeah.
relationship that can
Yeah.
help seal the deal.
Mhm.
And you find what works best for your family. Because I'm not
Yeah.
going to get political on this. I'm not even going to say like what I think is better or not.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I just want people to be in quality relationships that
Yeah.
are healthy and happy, especially if there's children involved. You need to focus on the quality of your marriage and the quality of the relationship you have with each other.
Yeah.
And so there is nothing better than finding that. And I love hearing people's stories about, you know, their
Yeah.
process. So
Yeah.
we'd love to hear more about if you got a fun love story.
Yeah.
If you're in the woes of dating right now, we would love to hear from you. Offer our love and support.
So funny.
If you're a mom, because you're most likely a mom, if you're listening to us, I feel like that's probably our niche. But if you're a mom, we also want to encourage you to not stop dating your partner.
Yeah.
Because motherhood is hard and
Yeah.
parenthood is hard, and you need to have that friendship and love with your family unit. So maybe we'll share some dating ideas with your spouse. Some fun.
Yeah, that would be a fun episode.
I think so. We should
Yeah.
do that. Actually, that would be a fun one if people want to submit to
Yeah.
good like dating ideas with their partners.
Yeah.
And how they continue to get to know
I would
each other.
also like people to I'd like to maybe do another episode on like communication tips.
Yes. Yeah.
And like what works in communication.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Well,
let us know your questions. If you want to ask us questions about either our love stories or how we communicate with our partners that we find works for us, let us know what your questions are.
Yeah.
Like, subscribe, comment.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. Peace and love. See you later.